Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. My sympathies to the city, the beautiful city, I might add, of Los Angeles, California. Lakers Nation, Clippers Nation, all 14 of you. It is not a good day. Definitely going to get into that later in the show. I'll start with the Clippers, get to the Lakers. My good buddy Ryan Flowers will join the show in about 15 minutes. Also, two incredible playoff performances in the last few days. Luka Doncic last night and Dame Lillard against the Denver Nuggets the other night. You'll get a chance to see Damian Lillard finally in a game that's not, let's say, inconvenient for those of us on the East Coast. That game against the Nuggets, Game 6, tips off at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I believe on TNT. Let me start with the Clippers. So the Clippers, they win Game 4. I should say, you know what? Let's go back further. They dropped the first two games in LA, okay? And the sky's falling. I flat out came on here. I said it's a sweep. It's sweep time for the Los Angeles Clippers, a team that is described as the team in the basement, if you will. And what do? They go to Dallas in Game 3. They're down 19. It looks like their ship has sunk, and they come back and win. And then in Game 4, it was a blowout from start to finish. Luka played bad. It was just a dominant performance by the Los Angeles Clippers. Game 5 last night. You'd think LA has all the momentum. Luka's neck is bothering him. He's questionable for the game. Then he's probable, but he's got this neck issue, shoulder issue that he's dealing with on the left side. And the Clippers, in true Clipper fashion, let their guard down. That's what they did. They let their guard down. And you gotta say the blame primarily is on Kawhi Leonard. Paul George wasn't terrible last night. Trust me, I've seen worse from Paul George in the playoffs. I've seen Pandemic P in the playoffs. That wasn't terrible. Okay, Kawhi was bad. Obviously, we all know airballed the game-winning shot, which is as bad as it gets. But you're looking at the box score for last night's game. And this is the guy who won finals MVP in Toronto, right? Leads the Raptors to their first finals. They win their first championship in 6 against my Warriors. And he goes to the Clippers, and he has got the New Balance commercial. It's Kawhi Town. He's taken over the city of LA. And in a big pivotal, not elimination game, but a pivotal Game 5 in your building, well, really in the Lakers building. You're just renting it for the time being, but it's your building tonight. You go 7 for 19 for the field, 1 for 7 from 3, again, including the air ball in the corner at the end for 20 points. That's not going to get it done. It shouldn't take you 19 shots to get you to 20 points. Again, Paul George wasn't awful. 7 for 15, 23 points, 10 rebounds, but we don't expect Paul George to be that dude when it's time. Now, again, we got an elimination game. We all know what Paul George does in an elimination game, so again, you really got to hold your breath here. But let's just discuss Luka for a second. This, I heard Jackie McMullen of ESPN say it best. She said, this series is not about Luka. These playoffs are about Luka. Think about last night. I'm looking at this. This is crazy. So Luka says after the game, I could have played way better, which it's really hard to imagine how he could have possibly played better than he did. Think about this. Only six of the Dallas Mavericks baskets last night were scored by other players other than Luka. 6. Now, think about that. That was one of those vintage of, it reminded me of LeBron in his first stint in Cleveland when they couldn't get him an all-star. And he was just dragging those Cleveland teams to first overall season. He's winning MVPs and scoring 40 points, and it's still not enough against the big 3 in Boston or those really good teams in Orlando led by Dwight Howard, right? Running into these juggernauts that are much better basketball teams, but nobody can compare to the King in Cleveland. But all the blame went on LeBron because, for some reason, people thought it was a knock on his legacy that he couldn't get Anderson Varejao to the NBA Finals. I'm still trying to figure that one out, but it is what it is. But that was special. That was special last night, what Luka did. Hurt neck, slash shoulder. He had some, had something. I don't know if it's a brace or something on his neck, shoulder area. Drops 42. Just, I mean, I got no words. It was an incredible playoff performance. I think I read today that he's played in 11 career playoff games. It's going to be 12 tomorrow night. But in 11 career playoff games, he has 4 40-point games. He's also got a 39-point game in this series, trickled in there as well. And his only playoff experience has come against these Los Angeles Clippers, minus Rondo, virtually this exact same team as last year. And obviously Montrezl Harrell was on the team along with Lou Williams. But as far as the 2-star players, this is what Luka Doncic went against last year in the bubble, and he took them 6 games. Now he's got a chance to close them out in 6 games in his home building. I believe it's going to happen. I said Clippers in 6 before the series started, but that's not looking so high right now. I'm going to take Dallas to win tomorrow night, barring something crazy. So let's shift now to the Lakers. So Anthony Davis was out for Game 5. We talked about this on Monday. He was unlikely for Game 5 on Tuesday night. I said I think Phoenix is going to win Game 5. But I didn't see that coming. I don't think anybody Phoenix, you didn't see that coming. Down 30 at halftime were the Los Angeles Lakers, and they end up losing by 30. LeBron was not great. Schroeder, once again, save for Game 2, Dennis Schroeder has been terrible in the series. He's been awful. I don't know why Vogel's even starting him at this point. Kuzma, after the first quarter, was bad. It was just a bad performance by the Lakers. Again, Chris Paul looked like he re-aggravated that shoulder. So if there's anything for the Lakers going into tonight's game, where it's do or die, you could say, well, okay, Chris Paul is, again, not 100%, which he wasn't going into Tuesday night, but now he re-aggravated the injury, it appeared. But then you look at guys like Booker, who had a fantastic night, right? He got going, he had the and one early, he was hitting shots all over the place, mid-range 3. Ayton was bullying Andre Drummond and Marc Gasol down low. Lakers are in trouble. And, I obviously picked them to win this year's championship. I picked them to get to the finals to beat the Brooklyn Nets in 6 games. I'm out on that prediction. I've officially bailed on the Los Angeles Lakers. I believe their season's coming to an end tonight. I think it's over. Especially if Anthony Davis does not play, then it's really over. I haven't gotten an update from Woj or anybody, or Shams Charania or any of the great sources in the NBA that he's not playing or that he is playing. Still, I think it's a little too early to decide that. But I just think when you look at this team, they're not as deep as we thought. The adjustments or lack thereof from Frank Vogel has been glaring compared to what Monty Williams has done the series. The lack of great point guard play has been evident. Heck, Cameron Payne. Where did Cameron Payne come from? Only thing we all knew Cameron Payne for was those weird handshakes he did with Russell Westbrook back when he was with OKC back in 2016. Cameron Payne has been taking Dennis Schroeder to school. And this is the same Dennis Schroeder that wanted it was like a 4-year, $84 million contract. I don't know if that was the one he turned down or the one that he's asking for, but he's losing money right now. And Cameron Payne is probably stealing that from him. This is what we're going to have to see from the Lakers in order for them to win just tonight. And again, I think they're favored -2 by Vegas. But when I look at them right now, and it might be too much to ask. It very well might be too much to ask, and I'm totally open to that being the case. We're unfortunately probably going to have to see a 2018 version of LeBron James being, 40-something points, probably a 45-point triple-double just to give them a shot. But in order to get a triple-double, what do you got to get? You got to get assists. What did the triple-double king, Russell Westbrook, say? They said, what's the toughest part of getting triple-double? He said assists. And you'd think a guy his size, 6'3", even with his leaping ability, going to get double-digit rebounds is incredible, which it is. But you'd think that'd be the toughest part. But then again, come to think of it, with assists, you can do everything in your power to set up teammates. They got to make the shot. That's on them. And Caruso hasn't made shots. Wesley Matthews hasn't made shots. Obviously, we all know AD's been unreliable. Andre Drummond was awful. Dennis Schroeder, awful. Kyle Kuzma, awful. I mean, this is very similar to those teams that LeBron was dragging to those number one overall seeds that he was dragging into 6-7 game series against the Big Three Celtics or against the Dwight Howard led Orlando Magic. That's what it's starting to remind me of. And it's not like Phoenix is this juggernaut. I mean, maybe they're on the precipice of being that. I mean, first year with Chris Paul and, Booker and Ayton and Monty Williams, his second year with Phoenix. He's a great coach. We didn't see this coming from the Suns, but we're going to need to see like Hall of Fame LeBron James in order for the Lakers to win tonight. I don't know if at this stage in his career, 36 years old, year 18, coming off a pretty serious ankle injury, is that too much to ask? Very well, it could be the case. I don't know. But this is desperation time. I said on Monday, it's panic mode for the Lakers. It's time to put this in the panic mode. Their season's on life support right now, especially if Anthony Davis is out. I think whether he plays or not, keep in mind, groin injuries are like hamstring injuries. They don't just go away. They linger. Groin injury, back injuries, those linger. Those are going to, if Anthony Davis plays, he's going to be nowhere near 100%. Nowhere near it. And so all of that compounding, the Lakers are beat up. They're tired. It's been a roller coaster of a season. They had to play in the play-in game against Golden State. It's just one of those situations where it was not meant to be. And listen, what does every champion have in common, no matter how great you are? Every single champion, they get a break. They get a little luck, whether that be health, your team being healthy, the other team not being as healthy as you are. That happens. NFL, NBA, that happens, right? Let's look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for example. Stacked team. Tom Brady, greatest quarterback ever. That defense was just lights out. But it sure helped. And look, I picked Tampa Bay to win the Super Bowl before the year started, and I love Tom Brady. So this is not, hating on Tom or Tampa Bay or anything. But it sure helped that Kansas City's top two tackles were out for the Super Bowl. Thus, Mahomes was running for his life the entire night, right? Like those little breaks, those happen. I mean, that's the team that gets the most breaks normally seems to win. And that's, and it's not like Phoenix has gotten that many breaks either. I mean, Chris Paul got hurt in game one, and he seems to always get hurt in the playoffs, and he gets hurt the very first game. It just feels like one of those situations, man, where it was just not meant to be for the Lakers. AD deals with injuries all season long. And even for Anthony Davis, he was a career high in games missed for AD. LeBron missed a lot of time with the ankle injury. You have a roster that does not fit well together, and I was dead wrong on this. I thought they were going to fit perfectly. I thought Schroeder would be a great addition. At least in the starting lineup, he hasn't been. It's one of those situations where it just was not meant to be for the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, what better way for me to, I don't know if I'd say put this Lakers season to bed, but what better way for me to do it than to bring a loyal member of Laker Nation? Let me bring on my man, Ryan Flowers of Clutch Sports Talk. How you doing, my man?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good, Bryson, man. I'm listening to you talk about the Lakers, and you're speaking the truth. And so it's very solemn around my house right now because it looks like we are coming to the end of the season. It looks like we're coming to the end of what LeBron's greatness is. I'm doing okay.
I understand. So let me ask you first, what do you think is going to happen? Let's just talk about Game 6. What do you think is going to happen tonight?
Well, what I think will happen is I think LeBron is going to come out aggressive. I would expect him to come out aggressive tonight, which is something that he doesn't do it as much as I think he should. But I think tonight, with the season on the line, he's going to have to go out and get his. And we're going to see early if there's any fight in the Los Angeles Lakers. Guys like Dennis Schroeder. I actually, before I came on your show, I read that on Twitter that he removed point guard from the Lakers from his Twitter account. So it looks like he's already getting ready to go fishing. Obviously we don't know about AD yet. I'm pretty sure he's going to be out because those growing injuries definitely linger. But I would expect LeBron to actually come out really aggressive from the start. That's what I expect in the first quarter.
Okay. No, I think he doesn't have a choice. And I noticed in Game 5, and I get where he was coming from, but I think you noticed in Game 5 he was obviously passive. I think he was doing that because Game 4, outside of LeBron, nobody really played well for the
Pretty
Lakers,
much.
and so he's trying to get the shooters involved. He's trying to get everybody,
Right.
Drummond, Gasol.
Right.
You couldn't throw it in the ocean. And
Right.
so I think he's going into Game 6 saying, at least for tonight, I got to take it upon myself. I got to be the man.
Right.
So
you can't say it was because of him they lost tonight. That's basically what he's going to go out and try to do. Like, and you made a good point back. Like, you're going to need a 2018 LeBron in the finals against the Warriors type of effort just to even become close, because this team is not a good team. Now that we see everything about him, the Gasol move was not great. Schroeder has not really lived up to being a sixth man of the year. Even Montrezl Harrell, I mean, from some sorts. And granted, he hasn't fit in well. I don't know what the deal is with that. But tonight, LeBron is going to say, you know what? I'm going to try to hang as many as I can. So that way you pundits can say, well, it wasn't because of me we lost.
That's fair. And I think something, and I've heard rumors that the Lakers are going to do this, and I think they should. I think Marc Gasol is probably going to have to start tonight, because I've noticed with Drummond being in there, it clogs up the paint. It takes away. We all know when LeBron's at his best, driving kick, whether he's a freeway to the basket or he's kicking out to shooters and getting them involved. Now,
Absolutely.
That's the small picture just for Game 6. Maybe it goes to a Game 7. We'll find that out tonight. But big picture, it feels like there's a lot of holes in this roster.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That were not there a year ago, which doesn't make sense. We thought they weren't a great shooting team last year, but they were a much better defensive team. They didn't turn the ball over as much. So when we look to this offseason, we all know AD is his health is always up in the air. We never know, what you're going to get as far as, he's obviously a great player at his peak. He's a top 5 player.
Right.
What do you think the Lakers need to do this offseason, considering LeBron is fading out of his prime, if he hasn't already gotten to that point already?
Right.
And Anthony Davis has proven that he's not going to be that dude that's going to lead you to multiple championships, that great Lakers big man. What's next this offseason for the Lakers, assuming their season comes to an end against Phoenix?
Well, I think that there were holes even last year. I think the Lakers definitely benefited from COVID. I know that's kind of crazy to say, because you don't want to say people benefited from COVID, but that shutdown, that 4 or 5 month shutdown, they benefited from, because honestly, going into the middle of the season, we didn't think the Lakers were going to even be in contention. I mean, the Clippers were the talk of the league. I mean, we all thought if a team from LA was going to win, it was going to be the Clippers. I think they still didn't develop a shooter. They still don't have any really good shooters on the floor anymore. I think honestly, they're going to have to really, really revamp this whole roster. Guys like Kuzma, I like when they kept him, but now looking at it now, it's kind of like he's so inconsistent. And now he's in his 4th year in his league, or going into his 5th, I believe. He really isn't a guy that you can trust. Obviously, AD is a big factor, aka Mr. Street Clothes, given by Charles Barkley a few nights ago. He also benefited from the COVID, from the pandemic, where he was able to rest for 5 months. People don't remember, for those who don't follow basketball as much, AD missed a lot of time in New Orleans as well. And he never made any deep runs in the playoffs. Why? Because his team wasn't that great. But then again, he wasn't even around. So now that the spotlight has been put on the Lakers now with him being there, he's a guy that you can't really rely on playing a full season. And like you said, too, with LeBron is older now. He's not the same guy anymore. He cannot take over games the way he has been able to. Maybe every now and then. We're not going to see that LeBron from 2018 against the Warriors. Like, that was probably the greatest LeBron we've probably ever seen, even in a losing effort. So I think they're going to have to probably make 7 to 8 roster changes on this team to even be viable in the West. And I'm not saying the West is like overbearing, because to your point a few minutes ago, it's not that Phoenix is so great, right? When you look at them, they're like, they're good. They're a good team. Chris Paul is a great player. They're well coached. They have a system, but they have guys that fit what they do well. The Lakers really just don't have anybody that I can really trust. KCP, reluctant to shoot. We talked about Kuzma. Schroeder probably is not going to even be there next year. The one guy I can possibly see them kind of retaining is Alex Caruso, because he's probably the best role player that they have. He does feel a need. He does play really solid defense. He does make plays. He's not looking to score a lot, but he will, he may give you 5-6 points every now and then, but he might make a real nice play on the defensive side of the ball. As far as the center play is concerned, Marc Gasol, really, I never understood that move from the beginning. I get what they were trying to do. We're trying to space the court out, but it just seems like they just never got any other shooters around him. You know, they let Danny Green go, which I wasn't a fan of Danny Green, but look, he's doing what he's doing in Philadelphia now. He's playing his role there. The Lakers have a lot of thinking and conjuring up to do, because this is it. I feel like we're at the twilight of LeBron's career. He's what, 30, 37, 38 years old, 36 years old. You know, he's suffered at least one major injury here in the last 2 to 3 years. This is pretty much it. And you can't depend on him and AD to play a full season anymore. You just can't. So, and I read today that Chris Paul is probably more than likely going to opt out of his contract with the Suns. So maybe he tries to go to LA for the second time, perhaps, but even still, he's still an older guy, an older veteran with some injury history. So the Lakers definitely have a lot to consider going into next season, whether they win tonight or hell, even if they move on, say they move on, you know, it's futile because they don't have enough depth to compete with these teams that are young and are hungry. I don't think they're hungry enough either.
I think one of the things that's not talked about, what made the Lakers so great last year is, number one, and I've talked to other guys about this, that LeBron was the point guard last year, but when he was off the floor, it was Rondo time. Rondo was running the show and did an outstanding job, especially in the NBA Finals. And so I think when you have a guy like Dennis Schroeder, who's not a pure point guard, I think that hurts. So to your point, I think, you know, in free agency, Chris Paul's probably going to be available. Kyle Lowry, I get an older player, but experience. He's played in a lot of big games.
Which LeBron likes. LeBron likes older veterans. He doesn't like to play with young players. Right.
So I think, personally, getting a point guard should be the number one goal for the Lakers in free agency. Do you think, last Laker question, do you think building the team as far as depth or getting another superstar is more imperative?
Honestly, I think depth is probably more imperative, because what kind of superstar are you going to get? I don't think Chris Paul is great, and I think he's won everywhere he's been, which we're assuming he would go there, right? But at this point, you look at these other teams, man. I'm watching Philly the other night, and look how deep they are. I mean, they beat. I mean, I get it. The Wizards aren't a great team. They definitely underachieved, but still, their best player, Joel Embiid, didn't even play, and they still smoked these guys by like 20 points. Still, with Ben Simmons, who can't shoot apparently, right? So, I think moving forward, the league has changed. You do need superstars, but if you can't get a great collection like the Brooklyn Nets have, you got to go for depth. And right now, the Lakers really have no one coming off the bench to help, you know, give LeBron a breather, or even AD. So I think they got to shoot for depth.
I probably agree with you. I think the only star free agent that might be available, and that's all dependent on the next question I'm going to ask you, is Kawhi Leonard. Does he opt out of his deal? Does he opt to stay in LA? Because obviously he's obviously a Southern California kid, and opt to go to, you know, the team upstairs in the Los Angeles Lakers. That obviously remains to be seen. Now, as far as those Los Angeles Clippers who have yet to win a home playoff game, what's going on, man? Because you're 0-2 in the series. You go into Dallas, you're down 19, you come back, you win game 3, you smoke the Mavericks in game 4. Luka's awful, and it feels like the whole series has turned on a dime. Right. And then the Clippers do their thing in late game situations. Right. Almost made a late run to beat Dallas and came up short ultimately. What's going on right now with the Clippers?
Well, I think if I'm Ty Lue and I'm the coach of the Clippers right now, I have two options. One, you let Luka do what Luka does, right? He's going to go out and get his 40. It is what it is. But you can't let guys like Hardaway or Finney-Smith or anybody else go and get theirs. So you either have to let Luka get his and cut everybody else off, or you shut down Luka altogether and you let these other guys score. And I don't think they know exactly because if I'm him, honestly, I'm just gonna get Luka because you can't stop Luka Doncic right now. I mean, he's playing out of his gourd right now. So if you got Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, arguably one of the best defenders in the league. So what they say, right? We haven't really seen it that much lately. You got to match up with some of these other guys. You cannot allow these other guys to get 15, 20 points a game, because literally he's doing all their scoring and their playmaking. So as far as the Clippers are concerned, they're another team. I feel like they have some really good pieces if you look at their roster overall, but they definitely have underachieved the last 2 years. Because Dallas is okay, right? But you're letting one guy just destroy you. I mean, literally, he is coming into your court and destroying you. And I think they don't really have an answer for it. And Kawhi Leonard, to me, I don't know, man. It's like his leadership comes into question, because and I'm not in their facility. I don't know what these guys talk about, but it's all speculation. From what I can see from watching on TV, I don't know if anyone's being held accountable. I don't think anyone in that locker room is like, hey man, like, what are we doing? And it starts with Kawhi Leonard. He needs to tell Ty Lue, like, hey man, hey, I'm the claw. Like, I need to be matched up on him the whole game. You got to accept that challenge. You have Paul George who can help with the offensive load. Why not let me just make a run at this guy? But I get it. Luka is very gifted and talented. And I'm not saying that Kawhi would automatically just shut him down, but come on, this guy is going. What is he averaging in this series? Over 35 points or something like that? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. One man. So I'm with you, like you said earlier. I got the Mavericks. I think this will go Game 7. I think the Clippers are still talented enough because the series switches back to Dallas.
Dallas, yes, I'm mistaken, for Game 6.
I think the Clippers will win this next game, but I think they're just going to choke it off in Game 7 because that's what they do.
That's what they do. I think what's concerning if you're, well, I hate to say if you're a Clippers fan because I always say there's about 14, 15 of them.
Right.
But
right.
If what's concerning is outside of Luka, 6 baskets were made by other Mavericks players.
Right.
6. I mean, you had guys like, Paul George didn't play terrible. We've seen a whole lot worse from Paul George in the playoffs.
True. This is true.
Kawhi, I think Kawhi had a bad game. He obviously missed the game-winning shot that would have tied it, or game-tying shot, excuse me. You had guys like Terrence Mann playing well. And so I'm looking at it and I'm saying, Luka got his, sure, but everybody, Porzingis was bad. He hit a big 3 towards the end, but the rest of the game, he was atrocious. Up until at the end, Hardaway couldn't throw it in the ocean. Finney Smith was bad, Cleva. So I think when you look at it, if you're the Clippers, you're like, man, we got to make somebody else beat us at some point. Whether they give Luka possibly, the Steph Curry treatment, double teaming him as soon as he comes across half court and saying, hey, you beat us. If Tim Hardaway sends us home, then Tim Hardaway sends us home.
Right, you can live with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is really concerning if you're the Clippers. Let's shift out east for a second. We got a best series of the second round is already set. Brooklyn, Milwaukee. I personally think, it's the first time I've said this on the show, I think the winner of this series is going to win the NBA Finals. I think this is basically, it's weird, but I feel like the NBA Finals are coming in the second round between Milwaukee and Brooklyn with how great they looked in the first round.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I agree.
Early prediction, who wins the series and who do you think is the X factor? Because we all know the stars, Giannis and Drew Holiday on one side and then the big 3 in Brooklyn on the other.
Right.
Who do you think is the X factor and who do you believe wins and in how many games?
Well, I'm still kind of researching a little bit, but off the cuff, if I had to say, I like Milwaukee. I like what they've done. I like the additions that they've had with PJ Tucker, a nice, a very rugged type of defender, rugged guy. He's not gonna be scared. He's not gonna back down, and he knows how to play James Harden. I'm pretty sure they guarded him. They guarded each other back in their Houston days. I really like that move. Forbes, to pick up Forbes, the guy from the point guard from San Antonio. I think they got him in the offseason. There's another scoring guard out there. And also, of course, we have to talk about what's his name? Is it Holiday? The Holiday, Drew Holiday, right? Like, they didn't have that last year, and I thought they were missing when Michael Brogdon left to go to Indiana. I thought the Bucks really missed him, and now they got a guy like Holiday who kind of, I wouldn't say he's like Brogdon, but he's a very good player. Very good on-ball dribbler. On-the-ball defender, and can shoot. I still don't trust Milwaukee, though. And I have to give the nod to the Brooklyn Nets only because they have a legitimate superstar in Kevin Durant. But I will say this. I think the series will go 7. I think it's gonna be down to the wire. I think because Milwaukee can kind of match up with them defensively. I can definitely see that. I think, it's just gonna boil down to those last 2 minutes of each game. Who is the guy that can their team go to? Who's the guy on Milwaukee that they can go to? Can we go to Giannis? I don't know. He can't shoot still. That's something that we've always talked about. Chris Middleton, I don't know. I don't believe in him yet. You know what I mean? When you look on the other side, you've seen Kyrie hit big shots. James Harden, for the most part, has hit some pretty big shots in his career. Maybe not so much in the playoffs, but at least Kevin Durant. At least Kevin Durant can say he's done something in the NBA Finals. So they at least have 2 guys on their squad, and that's the only reason why I feel like they have the slight edge. But I would not be surprised if Milwaukee pushes this game to game 7 and maybe win it. But just for the sake of not being a flip-flopper, I'm going to go with Brooklyn in 7.
Today, I agree with you. Again, I'll make my predictions for that series on Friday. But I think the thing for Brooklyn, and we still have not gotten the answer to this question because, heck, the Big Three only played 8 regular season games together.
Exactly.
And they weren't challenged by Boston in the first round, save for game 3. I mean, Tatum did all he could, but outside of that, that was, everybody knew they were going to take care of Boston. But I think the answer to the question we still haven't gotten is, in these close games, which they're going to have with Milwaukee, who's that dude that takes the final shot? Because their offense doesn't run, for example, like Golden State when you had all those great shooters. Well, who takes the open shot? Well, the open guy does. It was Clay, Steph, KD. Right. So I think it's KD because Harden's had a bad history in the playoffs. Kyrie, as the guy, has had a bad history in the playoffs. Right. Now that he's not anymore. Now that he's number 2 and really number 3, I think that certainly helps him a lot. I just think there's a lot to be determined in the series. What do you think, Dan Campbell? I'm sorry, I had to throw that in there. I had to throw that in there. I'm sorry for our podcast audience.
That's our buddy from that draft night.
Oh my goodness, biting kneecaps. 3-14. Here we come. Anyways, last question. Let's go to a team who's not a championship contender, but boy, do they have a great player. Right, Damian Lillard. One of the greater playoff performances that I've ever seen, certainly in clutch situations. Yeah, the tying 3 to send it to overtime. The tying 3 to send it. He got fouled on that one, by the way, to send it to double overtime. Is it time to recognize Damian Lillard as one of the most clutch players in the history of basketball?
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, I know Steph Curry gets a lot of love, and I know you're a Warriors fan, but I know you can appreciate, Dame Dollar's game. No doubt. I wouldn't say he's up there with Steph Curry, but literally he's another guy that you have to guard the minute he steps into the arena. Like he can shoot too. Like, I think we all forget about him because Steph Curry literally does this eye-popping, amazing stuff. But Damian Lillard, he's one of my favorite players to watch in the league by far. I mean, he's tough. He's rugged. He doesn't give a F. Like, he's coming to play hard every night, no matter who's on the court. So to answer your question, yeah, I believe so. I mean, we have to say he's one of the greatest players. I mean, literally, right now in the game, if not of all time. I mean, he just doesn't get a lot of love because he's in Portland, which, and you might be segueing to this, but I think it's time to blow that up in Portland. Like, literally, like, keep him, but you got to do something different. I mean, year in and year out, we're seeing this with Portland. Like, he'll have a great series. He'll drop 40, 50, 60 points on the team, and they end up losing the game. Why? And especially in this last game, like, come on, Robert Covington, what are you doing? How do you miss that dunk or layup?
And CJ stepping out of bounds.
Yeah, and after this guy has been, like, literally carrying, like, you want to talk about putting your team on your back, like, literally, this guy, he flew them, or what was the game at? In Portland? I forgot where the game was.
It was in Denver.
In Denver. Like, he literally put them on his shoulders, flew them from Portland to Denver, almost won the game, and they screw it up. It's time to blow that whole thing up. But yeah, I'm sorry, I digress because I feel strongly about Damian Lillard because he's such a great player, but we don't hear much about him because he's not in one of those big markets and he hasn't won anything of any significance.
Right. I think here's the problem with Portland. I'll get into this a little later, that they're not going to be a big free agent destination because it's not a big market. The reason there hasn't been an all-star game ever in Portland, they don't have a hotel big enough. So, like, that's kind of something that they're dealing with. And so I think they need to make, if they're going to try and keep this team together, they need to make a big trade for another star player.
Somebody.
I don't know who that'd be. Maybe a Paul George. I don't know. But I think when you talk about Damian Lillard and his level of clutchness, if that's even a word, that
it is.
There's 2 guys in the history of basketball that has hit series-ending buzzer beaters. Damian Lillard and this fellow by the name of Michael Jordan. I heard he was pretty good at basketball. So when you're looking at it, it's like, man, like I got to a point in that game where I was shocked when he missed. You saw Austin Rivers.
He was like,
yes, he was like, oh, thank God he finally missed. It was one of the better playoff performances that I think I've ever seen. Ryan Flowers, Clutch Sports Talk. When's your next show, by the way? I want to catch a show soon.
It's Monday. I actually took a break. Last week was real busy. My son's birthday was Wednesday, so I was like, I can't do anything on this Sunday. And then my daughter, she plays soccer, and so Memorial Day we were at a soccer tournament, so I couldn't do anything. And then yesterday, I was just tired, man. It's getting hot in Las Vegas. It's like 110 degrees here. So I just needed to rest up. So you're the first thing I've done all week. So, but yeah, I'll be back Monday. I'm Mondays and Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can catch me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter live, so you can catch me there. But before I go real quick, I want to ask you about the Atlanta Hawks and the Sixers. Because actually, that's the series that I'm really excited to watch. Like I really enjoy watching Trae Young, especially what he was doing in the Garden. So I'll pop off, but I definitely want to. I know you probably didn't plan this, but I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that series and what do you think about Trae Young. But I appreciate you, man. Hang in there, stay tough, man. Love what you're doing with the show, and much success to you, brother.
Yes, sir. Great to have you on. That is Ryan Flowers from Clutch Sports Talk. Be sure to catch his show Monday, I'm used to using my schedule. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. Basically, wherever you watch this show, you can catch his show as well. He's a great dude. He's obviously got a lot going on in his life, but he still makes time to join the show, and I greatly appreciate that. So let's get into he discussed Portland. When you look at the Portland Trailblazers right now, obviously we talked about Damian Lillard, one of the better playoff performances that we've ever seen. 55 points. By the way, I forgot to mention this, broke Klay Thompson's record for the most threes hit in a playoff game with 12. That's only 2 off of the all-time record, also set by Klay Thompson with 14. So just one that you won't find many performances in a clutch situation better than what Damian Lillard did the other night in Denver. And obviously Game 6 is tonight, tips off in about an hour and a half in Portland. The Nuggets will look to close out. The Blazers will look to move on. I think Portland wins these next 2 games and the series. I said Portland in 7. I'm going to stick to that. I'm going to go down with the ship. But I think when you look at the Portland Trailblazers, here's the issue. And they face the same issue that every small market team does, is when you draft a guy like Dame, who's, again, I'm going to sit here and say this. I think Damian Lillard's one of the 5 clutchest players in the history of basketball. I really do. He's up there with MJ. You're talking about guys like LeBron, who's hit. This narrative LeBron isn't clutch. Just stop. As speaking of LeBron James, we got another Lakers fan with a comment on here. My man Barry Grant Jr. Great show, love it. Be nice on my Lakers, or we're gonna have words. LOL, love it. When you lose by 30 in a must-win playoff game, man, I'm not gonna be. This isn't gonna be singing nursery rhymes and singing Kumbaya. So no, your Lakers are in trouble, my man. But back to Portland, they're in the same situation other small market teams are. You draft a great player, you find a diamond in the rough in Damian Lillard, and you put nice pieces around him. CJ McCollum, Carmelo Anthony, Enes Kanter, Yusuf Nurkic, Norman Powell, Covington, nice players. Nice role players, right? But CJ McCollum's not a 2. There's been this kind of thing like CJ McCollum's a 2. He's a good player. He might even be a borderline all-star. He's not a 2. He's kind of in that Chris Middleton category where if he's your second best player, you're not winning a championship. That's why Milwaukee went out and got Drew Holiday, because if Chris Middleton's your 3, okay, here we go. We got a new conversation now. So when I look at Portland, what do? What's the biggest way to solve this problem that, small market teams have to deal with? Make a trade. Go out and get somebody, because you can't do it in free agency. Guys are not going to Portland. They're going to go to LA. They're going to go to Philadelphia. They're going to go to Miami. They're going to go to these big market franchises, these franchises that have a history of winning. I don't think Portland's won a championship since the 70s. So, they don't have a history of winning championships. When you look over the course of their history, say for one, they may have won another one, but I think their most recent was in the 1970s. Let's see. We have another comment from Barry. He says, does Dame stay if they lose again in the first round? I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of movement this offseason. As far as trades, I agree with you. I think there will be a lot of movement. Dame has been very clear, Barry, that he wants to stay in Portland. He said, I want to win a championship in Portland, whether that's realistic or not. And with this current roster, it obviously isn't. That remains to be seen. Again, I think if you make a trade for a Paul George, if you make a trade for a guy like that, okay, maybe we have a new conversation. But I think that's the dilemma that Portland faces. Do they blow it up? Do they trade Dame and see if they can get as many assets as possible? I don't know. You're talking about a guy in the middle of his prime that's gotten you to the playoffs year in and year out. And they're just in a real tough situation. Even if they win this series against Denver, which I think they will. I think they're going to win the next 2 because, listen, Portland was in this exact same situation 2 years ago against Denver, losing game 5. They're down 3-2 in the series, and they come back, win game 6 pretty easily in Portland, and they win a great game 7 in Denver. As we see another comment from Ryan, who was just on the show here. He said, I'd love to see Bron, AD, and Dame. Well, I don't know if the Lakers have anybody that they could trade that Portland would want in return for Dame. Like I mean, Kuzma, I mean, Schroeder's gone after this year. He's already a free agent. Drummond, I think, is also a free agent. Gasol, I mean, there's some real flimsy pieces that Portland's not going to take. You'd have to throw in a lot of draft picks, which even if the Lakers are not contenders for the next few years, they'll be a good team. They'll be about like Portland, right? They'll be a nice team, but they're not going to be in possibly in the situation of contending for championships, and they're not going to be in the situation for constantly being at the top of the lottery with Minnesota or Detroit or Cleveland. Because listen, you got LeBron, you're not going to be at the bottom of the lottery, or the top of the lottery, I should say. So I don't think they have the pieces to possibly trade for a Damian Lillard, but crazier things have happened. But I think it's just what Portland faces. It's the reality of being a small market. And that's I look at a team like the Memphis Grizzlies, for example. Ja Morant, I know they got closed out in 5 games, and I actually picked them to upset Utah, and so that went up in smoke. But I know they lost in 5 games to Utah. Ja Morant, ladies and gentlemen, is turning into a superstar. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's obviously can jump out the gym, and it scares the crap out of me every time he lands because it reminds me of Derrick Rose and what happened to him. But we're talking about a guy who, in the biggest games, shows up, plays big, isn't scared of the moment. This is a superstar in the making, without a doubt. I mean, this is his second year, people. This was his second year. I love Zion. I really do. Ja's done way more in the league than Zion's done. First of all, he's been healthier long term. He almost got the Grizzlies to the playoffs last year, but then Jaren Jackson got hurt, and they went on a losing streak and lost the play-in game against Portland. And then this year, they're the 9th seed. They got to win 2 straight games to get into the playoffs. They beat San Antonio, and they beat Golden State on the road, and Ja was amazing, especially in the second one against my Warriors. So I think this is, Memphis, unlike, a team like the Lakers, they've got assets everywhere. I like Dylan Brooks. I really do. I don't think he's a number 2 for the future. I think Memphis has the makings. I love Taylor Jenkins, their head coach, of a team that could possibly contend for a title in the next 3 to 4 years. So if you put the pieces around your budding superstar in Ja Morant, okay, we got something here. So I think Portland's in that same situation. They got to make a deal for us, another superstar player, in order to put them in championship contention. But we're talking about, 6-7 years straight of getting to the playoffs and nothing. I mean, they nothing to show for it. The closest they got was the Western Conference Finals, but they ran into this juggernaut called the Golden State Warriors, and that was the end of that. They got swept. So they need another superstar player in order to contend. Now, at the request of Ryan, I'll go and talk about this. I think I had it on my list here to talk about. Atlanta and New York. Goodbye. Good night, Knicks. I had the Knicks winning this series in 5 games. Turned out it's the opposite. It was the Hawks winning in 5 games, and it was Trae Young who, starting in game 1, became the modern-day Reggie Miller. Not just in the fact that he can shoot. No, he can't shoot like Reggie could, but he can shoot. He can pull from the logo, as he did, at the dagger at the end of that game last night. But he turned himself into the new Madison Square Garden villain. Now, he wasn't going head-to-head with Spike Lee and everything like that, but the Garden does not like Trae Young. I think you could say the turning point of this series was when Knicks come back. Atlanta outplayed them the whole series. Knicks just made a great comeback in game 2 to get their only win of the series. But you see these Knicks fans, and I love Knicks fans. I feel bad for them. But you see these Knicks fans outside the Garden. We want Brooklyn. And I'm like, you don't even want Atlanta. So you darn sure don't want Brooklyn. You don't want that 3-headed monster, in the same state as you. So you don't want that. And Trae Young and the Hawks, to use a Michael Jordan term, took that personally and dominated them at home in games 3 and 4. And completely outplayed them, especially in the second half last night. And that was the end of the Knicks season. Don't have much to say about New York except for I guess we fell into the Tom Thibodeau trap again. And Tom Thibodeau, I believe, is coach of the year. Nothing was expected of the New York Knicks, and they became the 4 seed. That's strong. Without it, I mean, Julius Randle was an all-star, and I think he's most improved player, which he ended up winning. But, you got guys like Derrick Rose, who, save for last night, had a great series. Alec Burks, Reggie Bullock, R.G. Barrett, like, guys. Good players, but guys. And they got to the 4 seed. That's pretty impressive. So, you look at them, you say that they're another team that's going to need some more superstars in the future in order to even think about contending for a championship, which the Knicks haven't done in quite some time, probably since the Ewing days. So it's been a minute for them. As far as Atlanta, going into their series against the Philadelphia 76ers, this is real interesting because it's something that doesn't get talked about enough about Atlanta. For the last few years, and this is Trae Young's 3rd year in the league, Atlanta's been an amazing offensive team. They can score with anybody. Obviously, everybody knows about Trae Young, but you got John Collins, you got Hunter, you got Herter, you got Clint Capella. You've got some good Lou Williams, one of the better bench scorers in the history of the game. You got guys that can put the Bogdanovich, Gallinari. You got guys that can put the ball in the basket. That's never been a concern for the Hawks for the last few years, but they could not get stops. Once they inserted Nate McMillan in as which he's still, it blows my mind. He's still the interim head coach. How on earth is he not the head coach yet? They cannot let this man get away. I'm about to talk about Boston and their situation, their new coaching search, but you cannot let him go to Boston or anywhere that needs a head coach. This is your guy. This dude turned this season around. He was the number 1 catalyst in doing that, and they turned into a mediocre defensive team to a great defensive team. And so I just look at that and I say, okay, they're great defensively, and as deep as Philly is, and Ryan made the good point, Philly's a very deep basketball team. You had guys like Seth Curry last night play great, and Thibault, they guys step up. But without Embiid, y'all ain't compete for championships in Philadelphia in 2021. As we have a comment from Barry. He says the Hawks have a legit shot to beat Philly if Embiid isn't a consistent figure in that round. What we're seeing with Joel Embiid is kind of what we've seen with Anthony Davis, is that both guys, one could argue, actually I will argue, those are the 2 best bigs in the game. No Jokic, who's a great player and who's number 3 right behind AD. But, if you say like one game, if they're healthy, I'd take Anthony Davis and Embiid over Jokic. But the problem is they can't stay healthy. Joel Embiid had the best season of his career, but he has no chance of winning the MVP. Why? He missed 20-plus games because he had that knee injury at midseason. That cost him in the long run. And so I think that's kind of the situation we're seeing with Embiid and with Anthony Davis. Now, AD, it seems like every game is hurt. So that's I guess a little different situation. But that is something to keep your eye on. Is that Embiid has a meniscus tear, and they say it's minor. They say they're not going to need surgery until the offseason, which is a good sign. But if Embiid is out, even game 1, if Atlanta can go on the road, steal game 1, and again, they're great defensively, they can score with anybody, and Philly's a great defensive team as well. But if we get into this situation like the Sixers were in against Washington in game 4, Embiid gets hurt, it's close at the end, and they play Haka Simmons. They intentionally foul Ben Simmons, who cannot shoot free throws. Matter of fact, he's actually got the lowest free throw percentage of any non-center in basketball at about 61%. Like, that's bad. And that's what's concerning about Ben Simmons, is he came into the league a bad shooter, and he's still a bad shooter. So, like, if he can improve that area of his game, then he'd be a top 10 player. He does everything else well. He's up for Defensive Player of the Year. He's probably the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year. You're talking about a great passer, great rebounder, gets other guys involved, but he can't create his own offense. So that's what the Sixers are dealing with right now. You're going to have guys like you did last night: Harris, Thibault, Curry, Dwight Howard. You're going to have guys like that step up and get it. Danny Green. You're going to have guys like this step up to keep Philadelphia going. Because if Embiid misses 2 games in the series, I might go so far as to give Atlanta the edge. I'm serious. Again, they can score. Knicks were a great defensive team. They could not stop Trae Young the entire series. They couldn't stop Clint Capella the entire series. And so that's how I view it from that standpoint. If Embiid plays the whole series, I'll probably take 76ers in 6 games because I think Atlanta's a team that's really on the rise as long as they keep Nate McMillan. They've got to keep this dude. They've got to keep Nate McMillan. Okay? Great defensive coach. You got shooters everywhere. This is in the modern NBA, that's what wins playoff games. And we saw that's what won in 5 games against a good Knicks team in the first round. But Philadelphia is a whole different animal. So definitely going to be something to keep your eye out for. I think that's also going to be a great series. It's not the best series in the East. That's obviously Nets, Bucks, but it is certainly going to be one to watch. And I don't think Philadelphia is a shoo-in to just advance to the Eastern Conference Finals, especially if Joel Embiid misses any time, especially game 1 at home. So going to be a great series. Let's shift before I shift to Boston. Let me just give a big shout out to Mike Krzyzewski. Coach K, as everybody knows him, he is going to retire after the upcoming 2021-22 season. He's been the head coach of Duke. This will be his 43rd year as the head coach of the Duke Blue Devils. I know everybody hates Duke. It's never made sense to me. I don't know. Maybe it's because, Christian Laettner, everybody hated Christian. Who knows? But everybody, a lot of people hate Duke. You can't hate Coach K. Like there's nothing to hate about this guy, right? He's one of the smarter basketball minds that we've ever had. Obviously, he coached Team USA for years. You got, to me, what says a lot about a college coach is when you have professional basketball players who look up to him. Like LeBron James, best basketball player of our generation. He looked up to Coach K when he went, with Team USA in 08 and 2012. Those gold medal teams. Kobe, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Carmelo Anthony. They looked up to Coach K. And obviously I think I read it's been like 43 or so first round picks have come out of Duke under Coach K. So that's incredible. And so he's without a question the greatest college basketball coach ever. And just big shout out to Coach K, who's going to retire after this year. I don't know if Duke, I don't follow recruiting that much, so I don't know if Duke is really going to be a contender this year, as they've been many years in their program history. So big shout out Coach K, as we have a comment from a Duke fan, also known as Barry Grant Jr. I became a Duke fan at 8 years old because of Coach K. He will be missed, but they will be in great hands with John. I hope I say his name right. John Shire. I don't know. I'll learn. But I've heard that their new head coach is a good recruiter, and so that's hopefully they do continue that trend if you're a Blue Devils fan. But I heard Jay Billis, one of the better basketball minds that's on TV at ESPN. I heard him say this, and I couldn't agree more. Following in Coach K's footsteps is going to be the most difficult of any coach, maybe in the history of sports. He's been there, guys. He's been there since 1979. Like that, just keep that in mind for a minute. Like that's a long time of a long 43 years of excellence, of championships, of first round picks, of coaching Team USA to multiple gold medals. He is definitely one of the greatest coaches in the history of American team sports, college or pro. And following in his footsteps, it's like following whenever Nick Saban retires. It's like following Nick Saban in Alabama, or following Bill Belichick in New England. Like I feel bad for the guy that has to fill those shoes, because they are some big shoes. So big shout out to Coach K. So last topic of the day, the Boston Celtics. Of course, they lost in 5 games to the Brooklyn Nets Tuesday night. And I've talked about Boston for the last month and a half on the show that, we all know they've underachieved this year. We all know, especially with Jaylen Brown out, even with Jaylen Brown, they didn't have much of a chance against Brooklyn in the first round, save for Game 3, which, by the way, in Game 3, KD and Harden were amazing. Kyrie had an off night. And then in Game 4, we had the whole issue with the idiot fan that threw a bottle at Kyrie and all this other stuff. But I think with Boston, my thing was they draft as well as anybody. I mean, they really do. They draft as well as any team in basketball. The problem is they're not aggressive. Now, part of the issue in Boston, a lot of reason they're not going to get free agents, even though that they are a big market. And we've talked about this on the show before, and other shows have talked about it, that Guys, we all know the NBA is a predominantly has predominantly African American players. Considering Boston's history, they don't want to go there. Kawhi wanted nothing to do with Boston. AD wanted nothing to do with Boston. Nothing to do with them. And so free agents, unfortunately, that's the reality with the Boston Celtics. And you have, you have their history to blame for that. But they can go out and get guys in trades. See Kevin Garnett. They went and got Kevin Garnett. They already have Paul Pierce. Obviously, they added Ray Allen. And they won the championship in 2008. And 2 years later, took the LA Lakers to 7 games. The Lakers with Kobe and Gasol. And Metta World Peace, if you want to throw him in there as well. He hit the game winner in Game 7. So it's just when I look at Boston, and I said I think Brad Stevens needed to be fired as the head coach. It is definitely not because he's not one of the better X's and O's guys in the league. He is as smart as any coach as there is, without a doubt. And he would get, if he did get fired, somebody else would pick him up immediately. But to me, it was his inability to connect with his players. Steve Kerr had a great quote. I don't know if he stole this from Phil Jackson or Greg Popovich, because it sounds like something they'd say. And obviously, Steve Kerr played under both of those guys. So maybe if it's a Steve Kerr quote, a Phil Jackson or Greg Popovich quote, but obviously all three are very successful. And Steve said only about 10% of coaching is X's and O's. Because again, when you get to this level, guys know how to play the game of basketball, especially veteran players. They know how to play basketball. But 90% of it is managing people. And Greg Popovich, he was great at that. Phil Jackson was the master at that, right? Rodman going to WrestleMania right in the middle of the 98 finals, as we all saw in The Last Dance. Managing personalities. Jordan, strong personalities. Scottie Pippen. And so that's what Phil Jackson was great at. And as great as an X's and O's coach as Brad Stevens is, he's not great at managing personalities. And so that's kind of where Boston was at. And so I think it's a win-win situation. I really do. That Danny Ainge steps down. Danny Ainge, he made obviously the great trade in 2013, trading Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett to Brooklyn for all those draft picks. And they obviously took advantage of getting those draft picks. One of them turning into their best draft pick among them all, Jason Tatum, in 2017. But you now put Brad Stevens in that position. You have his smarts. He's not in that coaching position where he has to connect with players. Excuse me. And so when you look at what are the options for Boston, I've heard Lloyd Pierce out there. I like Lloyd Pierce, but look at the Hawks without him. Like I think that plays into it. Jason Kidd, he wasn't great in Brooklyn or Milwaukee. Like I don't know how great of it. I feel like Jason Kidd as a head coach has been a little overrated. I've been beating this table for years. When is Mark Jackson going to get an interview? Mark Jackson, look what he did with 2 young players in Golden State. He said Steph and Clay are going to be the greatest shooting backcourt ever. That's exactly what happened, obviously. And so you have these two, you're going to have a guy come in, and Boston's a great job to have because you've got 2 stars, 2 all-stars under the age of 25. Jason Tatum, who I think he's a superstar. I mean, he is. Jaylen Brown, all-star guy. Kemba Walker, that contract's looking worse and worse by the day. They may look to move him if someone will take up that contract. It's looking like Michael Jordan was probably right in moving on from Kemba Walker, as good of a player as he is. Certainly Boston's in a dilemma, but I think being able to keep Brad Stevens in the building, just with him not as the head coach, I think it's a win-win for the Celtics. I really do. So certainly something to keep your eye out for, and I'm really, really interested to see who their next head coach is going to be. So that'll be very interesting. So with that is all the time we have for today's show. Got 2 unbelievable playoff games tonight. I've got about an hour from now, Portland and Denver tip-off from the Moda Center in Portland. I'm going to take the Blazers to win tonight, and I believe they'll win Game 7 in Denver this weekend. I believe the defending champion Los Angeles Lakers have their season go up in smoke tonight. Regardless of AD plays, because if he does, he will not be anywhere near what we all know Anthony Davis is capable of being. I think Phoenix closes out the series. They already won game 4 on the road in Staples Center, so who's to say they can't win game 6 and close them out on the road tonight? You're going to need a vintage performance from LeBron, and I just don't know if at this point in his career he's capable of giving it. So, good night, Lakers. It was fun. 2020 bubble championship. It was a good year for y'all, but it's over. It is over. But 2 great games tonight. 8 p.m. Eastern is Portland and Denver, and 10:30 Eastern. Gonna be a late night. LA Lakers, season on the line. Phoenix Suns. I think Phoenix closes it out tonight. And then the Clippers tomorrow. We'll get into those good old Clippers tomorrow on the show at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. Hope everybody has a great evening. Thank you so much to Ryan Flowers of Clutch Sports Talk. Be sure to catch his show out starting back next Monday, basically wherever you're watching this show at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So have a great evening, everybody. God bless you all. Peace out.